Yes. And then even though, like you said about looking at the old pictures when you're young, just even seeing on paper that I had Rogue above BDS already makes me like, because of how bad Rogue obviously was. But the joke is, mate, I had Rogue in my 7th spot. They obviously ended up 9th. You had them as 8th, so we weren't that far off. And I'll tell you what, this is one of the only teams, mate, I actually think we did nail. Because here's what I remember us talking about. We talked about the fact that, like, one of the reasons to predict them to win games was they had strong players, potentially mechanically, right? I will just say, guys, that's basically the only reason they won that G2 game. They did inexplicably beat G2 and then go back to being fucking resident sleeper, just trash, weren't they? But here's the reason why I actually don't feel bad about this one. Because part of my prediction that they'd be all right was last year, even when the Koi, obviously Rogue, they've changed it. That's why it's tricky that Mad Lions is Koi, but we know Rogue was Koi last year, right? On that team, I actually did think Larson was still really good, even though they were bad. So I was like, mate, he is the ultimate floor raiser mid. He also played quite bad this split, in my opinion. So I think if you add those things together, they just never did get off. Like I said, this is like I said in the Giant next one. This roster, I don't know how it ever works. You know, I don't even think it fundamentally was bad aside from Larson playing below par. But even if he played great, I don't know how. The joke is, best case now, they might have been like 6th or something. You know, like I don't think there was really a future for this team. Where are you at on this squad? Obviously, in theory, they're making this swap for top laner, right?
I'm just sad for this team, man, because I all the players in this team deserve to be able to play in a team that uses them well. But it's just the perfect assembly of players that will never be able to play together. Like you just got someone to play pure lane with comp. It's a comp as well as upsets. The biggest, over the time, I think the biggest mistake I've seen with them is trying to snowball there early, because they are so good in mid game that if you actually go 0-0-0, they are very good players. You don't need more than that. And you see that, for instance, there is a team that I think, for instance, Vitality, when Illisang doesn't die 20 times, you see that Karzi is playing by himself. He has the same profile as all these guys, but he doesn't mind playing alone. And because of that, they have way more presence in the early game around mid. And so they are able to enable the mid laner in this team, for instance. So I think there are systems in which you do not have to stay in bot lane 24/7 and play an enchanter for your ADC to be able to click. Because plot twist, in solo queue, it doesn't happen and he still wins games. And in previous teams as well. But the problem is, where are you going to move? If Zoelis leaves bot and goes mid, he has a guy that likes to have 5 CS lead on Azir and call it a day until 20 minutes. So is he gonna go top? He has a Jace player. Do you think Jace is a good champion for European playstyle? Probably not, right? Like playing
probably one of the worst. Probably one of the worst.
Yeah, so I mean, you've seen it. There was a blind Jace this last week, I think, and it went poorly as well. Like Jace is just not a good European champion. So my issue is, where is Zoelis going? Where is Markwin going? Where are these guys? What's the win condition? Mad Lions probably have, on the paper, worse laner than Rogue, but at least their plan is just, okay, even if we're worse, if we run with Elioya somewhere and we press our button, we might win the game. They have no plan, because there is no, I don't think there is any single, I'm pretty sure the voice chats on this very specific team is literally players broadcasting their game.
It looks like there's no shot caller, right?
Yeah, it's broadcasting. So they're speaking about I have a pretty big spike. Okay, I'm strong. Recall. I need 300 goals. I'm gonna go and shop. Guys, can you wait? I need to do red buff and then I'll come. All these things completely useless, right? What you want to know is what everybody needs to do in like 30 seconds in the next wave or next 2 waves. And so I really feel like it's a solo queue. It's pretty much an in-house, and I don't see the future bright for them, because the way you change that is you need to change jungle support at once. Either you change the jungle because you think the support is good, either you change the support because you think the jungle is good, either you change both and you go for something that's way like more coherent, but you gotta change that, because even if you change the top laner, it's not gonna change shit. Like you have to have people willing to sacrifice somewhere on the map to enable someone, and once you have someone fed, you can probably start playing the game.
I've got an angle for you, Sabatine. Here's an interesting one. Because obviously, in theory, we are in the esports winter and people can't really just spend more money. It's not like past years where the joke was, the way people like Vitality had money is, they would just add more players. They would just sign another big... They'd be like, we've just added upset to the roster. Like, how much money have you got? Like, you've already spent all that money on perks and on Fari. Like, what the fuck? So that is not going to happen this year, guys. But here's why I actually think the solution is, because you nailed it on the Rogue one, is notice on some of these teams, we're not saying like, oh, all these players aren't LEC level, get them out of the LEC and just replace. No. Some of them were just saying, like, I think Rogue's a great example. Most of these players, they're just not in the right team. But you look at the other teams, these teams could use these guys. Like, the joke is, I actually think the next meta, instead of just sign players between the splits, should be this. If you're the teams, it could be Carmine Corp, Giant X, Rogue, maybe even Vitality. These teams all have a bunch of strong players. They just don't necessarily have the right mix. I think the next move is to do it like football. Do a trade that's equivalent. Yeah, that way there's no... the contracts stay the same. Like, the joke would be, what if... I'll give you a random example. I don't know that I'd actually do this move, but I'm just going to give you a random one. If you want to change up the jungle in Rogue, well, I do think actually Douglas had problems in Vitality. Didn't look like he fit. Maybe Marcoon's better in Vitality and Douglas could do something. This is just an example. You could do trades like this. As long as the contract makes sense, you can swap back and forth. That way we're not spending more, and by the way, we both potentially, if it's the right deal, we both get the right trade out of it. We can improve our level, right? Seems obvious.
You're an utopist, Thorin, because you know how it works. It's like, we are all bad, but I gotta make sure you're just worse than me. That's how the Western esports market works.
Yes.
If anyone knows, like, I've tried to be as vocal as you can. Obviously, there are like information you can't disclose, but back in my time when I was doing the off season, and I think it's still the case for most coaches and general manager, it's like you kind of know which player you want to work with. Like, that's the truth. It's like you basically, I would say, one every 5 coach has exactly the team he wants.
Yes.
And there is 10 teams per league, meaning that there is 1, maybe 2 teams per league where the coach and the players are like, yay, we're all working together. Most of the case, it's like, we really wanted this guy. This guy really wanted to play for us, but his team knew that. And so they decided to put a super like unreal price on him to make sure we never get the players we want. And they shipped it to NA to avoid competition, for instance. And then classic. We had to go last minute when we had a verbal agreement to the ARL and get that guy that we don't think is as good, but we had to go with someone. This happens most of the time. Like, this is the norm.
Yes.
If people, you need to put that in your head. This is the norm. This is how the market works. So Rogue probably ended in this situation where they're like, Marcoon is out of SK. Do you want to work for us? And Marcoon was like, yeah, sure, guys, let's go. Let's go Rogue. And it doesn't feel like Marcoon is genuinely playing his playstyle, but he has to play the champ he plays because he's playing with Larsen and Comp, and Larsen and Comp needs to carry. But Larsen and Comp can't carry because to carry, they need assistance from a jungle. But Marcoon doesn't play this style, so suddenly you're asking Odoam need to play Irelia blind top every single game, and he can't do that. Or you're asking, I don't know, Caps to play Azir every single game. Like, that's not the way he plays. So this is why I feel sad, because some teams usually, and that's why probably you and I feel lost of hope for them, they're the result, like they're the loser of the off-season, because in this game of the musical chair of everybody trying to put, sticks into each other, bike wheels, someone loses more than the other, and that's Rogue that has on the paper a lot of individually good players that will not... You imagine the amount of coaching staff you need to make these players work. You need to create individual system for each of these players in a way that they can still be selfish while connecting with other teammates. Extremely hard to do. So I'm very sad for Rogue, because like they have to change players. That's the only team in the LEC right now where I'm like, if you guys don't change player, I guarantee you will end up in the same spot.
Yes, especially as we pointed out about the big teams like BDS and MAD, especially if the other teams get better, you're going to be in an even worse spot if you're Rogue. This is also why the hard thing right now is, I feel like because the money's gone away and now GMs and teams, especially with this like national scanning, are getting way more power in the server. The other thing about this last off season is, I feel like it was the last one where it was the awkward one where players still got too much power. Because if people don't know, I will just say right now, even though I like both these guys, and I obviously big them up all the time, both Larsen and Upset had a bunch bunch of options of where they could have gone, and they got to have some say in basically what team they ended up on. And so, spoiler, like, I can blame the teams for recruiting them, but like, you guys joined bad projects too. Like, if you join a team that like doesn't have certain things you need, like, yes, once you're locked in the contract, I can say like I would about like upset. Like, it's not really your fault. Like you were saying there, like there's a bunch of other things that never allowed you to play, but you chose to put yourself there. You essentially put yourself in jail, and then once you're in jail, it's like I'm like, he's in jail. It's like, but you didn't have to be there. So I hope in the future, actually, I'm with you. I hope we go more towards the org side, because if you notice, it's only the org can do what you're asking, which is do a total holistic approach of like, I'm going to put these a player's always doing a thing of like, well, I'll play with him, but I don't know about him. I'm not sure. They can't see the bigger picture like that. It has to be the org if you want it to. And by the way, I'd say it's been proven out by teams like Mad Lions and BDS. If you let them pick it, look, they might not pick the players I want, but it might be better than a bunch of like a solo queue all-star team like Rock or something.
Youngbuck was good at this. Youngbuck was very good at this. I think you had him in shows, and every time he was speaking, it's like, I might not. I remember the time, you know, he parted way with Chocolate and he took Nukduk back, and he was
got Mega Flint.
Everybody was very heavily criticized for it, but the fact that he got Youngbuck, and I mean, there is as well the fact that he was able to recruit Mikix.
That did help.
But I would say, you know, it's not always the sharpest knife you need. You know, it's like if you're serving yourself butter, you probably don't need the sharpest Japanese knife. And that's where it is. I still think that people like Irrelevance, people like Mirwin, Frescovi, Alvaro, Supa, VTO back in the days, you can look. There is a plethora of decent LEC level players in Euros. I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately, because it might mean that the LEC is bad or the Euros system is very strong. I lean more towards one, but I won't say which. I feel like because of the gap being so narrow, it is so stupid not to go for the cheap options. It is so stupid. I don't really understand what is at risk for these orgs, because if you're not in the top 3 in the LEC, you do not exist anyway. So please, at least try, like give it a try. I feel like, for instance, going with Zoedis was not a problem, but if you want to go with Zoedis and these super carries, please do a service to Markun. Let him go to a team where he's going to be able to, because Markun is doing a disservice to his own career by being a bad, because people will think he's a bad jungler. He's not. Look at SK last year. He was one of the best players in SK. I don't like his playstyle. I personally don't like carry junglers. I don't think that's the best way to play the game. That's why I'm always hesitant on Bo. I think Bo is so good at the way he plays that it might be the excuse to play for the jungle. But very few times it works. Like, you need the whole team to play it like the way, for instance, MDK is doing. Is like everybody goes with Elioya. For this reason, I think that it's a lose-lose situation, because Mad looks dog water, and Markun, for instance, if I take him as an example, looks bad. And I think it's better for Markun to play in the RL. I think it's better to be in the LFL right now and be one of the top junglers in the LFL and be like, oh, why is Markun playing in the LFL? He should be in the LEC next year, instead of being, oh, this guy is washed up. Because your career is very short now. If you're in the position of Markun, the position, for instance, I was speaking recently with VTO. If VTO didn't find Team Heretics last year, I think people would have said, he's cooked. He's good. He's good for the ARL.
Yeah.
It's over. It's like Aka. It's like, he's not good anymore. Like, guys, just move on. You know, we're going to just find a new. So because you have so few years in the LEC, you should not sign on the paper if you don't 100% think you're going to be able to express yourself from a player. And that just relates to your point, which is you were the person still signing your name at the bottom of the paper at the end of the day. And you should heavily insist on that, just not ask about the term and the price, but as well who you're playing with, who's going to coach you, what are the objectives of the team, what is the culture of the team, because this is going to take you places eventually.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.